Welcome to another edition of Minot Matters here at the Dakotan. Today we sit down once again with mayoral candidate Rob Fuller. This is a paid podcast, so we look forward to this conversation, and we invite you to join us along. How are you doing today, Rob?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me.
Good. Enjoying the summer?
Yeah, these last couple of days have been kind of hot, but kids have been, after my one son's surgery now, things are kind of getting back to normal. He's getting back into activities, so he's anxious to get going. My oldest son, he's playing baseball, and I'm one of the assistant coaches,
Oh, nice.
So we've been doing that. So summer's been busy so far.
Yeah, enough things going on. Well, that's good. That's good.
Not to mention I think there's a mayoral race or something.
I heard there is one. I heard that election day is August 5th.
Right around the corner.
Obviously, you've had the opportunity to have a lot of conversations, whether that's at the debate, the forum, podcasts, other news networks and stuff like that. What are your top three policy priorities in your first year as mayor, or even first 5 years?
Well, I don't think they're going to change much from what I've been on city council, right? My three big things. We need to drive down taxes, property taxes specifically, because they're high. We need to adjust or look at our budget and ways to cut spending instead of adding more spending every year. So I think that's first and foremost. Second, community involvement. We want the community involved. We want people to show up at the neighborhood meetings or at city council meetings. We want them to come talk to us. We want input to find out if the people are happy with what's going on or not happy with what's going on. Because, really, for the last 10 years, I think those are the majority of complaints that you hear, right? Doesn't matter what I say, the city just does what it does anyway. And that's not the attitude you want your community to have or feel. And so we need to change that. And then lastly, another big one is just making sure our local small businesses are getting a chance to get some of the tax dollars that they pay back for their services, meaning they get a chance to bid. They get a chance to, if we get the local contractor preference thing done, they get a chance to take a job from a big company that they wouldn't have normally got, but because they're local and they want to match the low bid, they can do that. And those are the three big things that I think we need to change. If we can start doing that, kind of getting, again, and I've said this before on different podcasts, as a city, you have two levers for growth. Taxes, high or low, and regulation, high or low. Right now, Minot is a high regulation, high tax city. So we're not seeing or experiencing a lot of growth. If we start to change those things, I believe we will see businesses and people start moving back into Minot.
Absolutely. So let's start out with property taxes. Obviously, that being a high concern there or priority.
Yeah.
How do we actually go about cutting property taxes? You guys did a lot of work on this. This council did your first year on council. You guys did a lot of work on that.
Yeah.
But how do you continue that progress?
Well, again, if and Mike said it a couple times up there. If you guys want to just over collect from everybody every year and then give it back to them, I'm fine with that. And if that's one of the levers that we use, hey, we're going to take this, but if we only use this, you guys are going to get the rest in a buy down again next year. People say, oh, well, you're just using general funds. No, we're not. We're using property tax that was over collected and then put into the general fund to be used for anything. Those tax dollars should go back to the citizens if we're not going to use them for the tax purposes intended, or for what property tax is intended to be used for. One of those things, fire PD essential services, right? Protective services.
Yeah.
So you've heard me talk about this a time or two, and Alderman Scott Samuelson brought it up at one of the current meetings too. My opponent, Paul Pittner, keeps saying, well, we want to do another half-cent sales tax for fire and PD. We want to do another half-cent sales tax. The city of Minot has already proven we're not going to vote for a city sales tax. And I would not ever implement a sales tax without it going to a vote. I'll say that right now. If we have the authority to do it, but boy, why would you? If you know the community is struggling already, you're not going to go do that. So, I've been saying, hey, let's reallocate one of the sales tax pennies. One of the sales tax pennies that we have is property tax buy down, economic development, the improvements it's called, and then flood control. And the other one, if I'm not mistaken, is NAS, not improvements, but something else, another word that's close to improvement. So they overlap. They're the same
Okay.
thing, kind of, right?
Yeah.
And then a property tax thing on that one as well. So
Okay.
I've always said, right now we have sitting in the Magic Fund, the economic development buckets, we have between 10 and $12 million.
Wow.
The program hasn't been used widely over the last number of years. And so I'm not suggesting taking that money out of there. Let's leave that money there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And those programs can continue to use those dollars until they're gone. And
Yeah.
at that point, then maybe we will reassess the economic development. But in the interim, we can take the property tax buy down portion of 1 penny, because if we're going to pay for it with sales tax, you don't have to raise property tax to have it bought down then again, right? So that's irrelevant. So you take the property tax, you take the economic development, and you take the improvement sections from 1 penny. That's 50% of a penny. It's about $6 million. And we reallocate it and we call it a first responders tax, right?
Right.
So that money then coming in each year, which will be roughly $6 to $7 million, can be allocated to fire and PD. Well, if we're paying for it with sales tax, then we don't have to raise property tax when they need 6 new firefighters, or they need new bunkers, or the police department needs to hire more officers. It's already paid for through sales tax.
Mm-hmm.
So rather than tax everybody to death again, let's reallocate what we're using. That will help keep property tax down. It will pay for the services that we need, and it'll help them get some of that extra money that we're not going to do through property tax.
Right.
So
Yeah, because I think when people hear about cutting property taxes, their immediate first concern is most of the budget is comprised of people. So who are we going to cut?
Right.
Is that a priority that you have of making cuts to people at City Hall?
we are not going to be cutting people out of the city of Minot. Like, we're not going, hey, this job needs to go, this job
Right.
needs to go. It's nothing like that. I mean, there's areas where we can cut that don't affect the employees. I mean, last year, if you remember, during the budget process, I think I was the only one that sat up there and said, hey, can't we find $1 million to cut somewhere else from the budget so we can pay our people everything that they were expecting and leave their health care or whatever it was alone? We don't want to get rid of people. Now, are we a little heavy sometimes? Absolutely. And as jobs come available, like if somebody quits or retires or something, we'll probably look at it. Do we need it? Or can we move that FTE from here maybe to over here, or something else where somebody else needs it? So no, we're not going to go through and slash jobs and cut positions or anything like that. There are so many areas in a $228 million budget that you can cut from that don't have to affect employees, that don't have to necessarily eliminate positions. Now, we asked the staff this year to show us what a 3% above, a 0%, and a 3% down budget looked like. And what we found out and what they realized is to get to a flat budget again, because we're constantly growing, right? To get to a flat budget again, a lot of departments which are running lean already would have to cut staff to get there. But then there's some departments that don't have to do that. And so that's helping us determine what the tactical cuts that we want to make, right? These aren't going to be broad across the board cuts. Hey, we're going to take some from here, we're going to take some from here because we can. And then we can leave wages alone. We can leave benefits alone. We can do all those things. And I think that's the way we have to do it. Now, with fire and PD and the property tax, again, we were talking just recently about bringing on 6 new firefighters. We thought we were going to get a grant for it. It's $1.5 million a year once we have to fund it all ourselves. I mean, on average, right? So where do we get that money if we're not going to raise property tax? Well, let's go take it out of sales tax, because then everybody that comes to Minot, we pay for the majority of it through property tax as citizens here, but then everybody that comes to Minot helps pick up that burden a little bit, because they're using our PD, they're using our fire services, they're using all the different protective services that we have in Minot if they're here in the community doing different things, right? So let's broaden it, and then we don't have to worry about raising that tax on property anymore, right? And ultimately, we're also going to be stuck for a couple years at least with this 3% raise. I mean, 3% that we can raise property tax annually, that's $1 million.
Yeah.
That ain't paying for hardly anything
not
on
much.
a $228 million budget. So.
Right. Yeah. I mean, just in the last budget, you guys redid the healthcare plans and all that, I believe it was, and that the hybrid option was over $1 million.
Yeah.
in one budget. So if you restructure how the sales tax work, is there a concern that maybe areas where that money is going to right now are going to get less funding or not enough funding?
Well, and that's why I said I pointed out those three things, right? Let's take the property tax buy down portion, right? It's 10% of that penny. So if you take the property tax portion buy down, and you're not raising property taxes, you don't have to buy it down anymore. You're using sales tax to supplement that property tax, right? So that one doesn't matter if it's funded or not. You go to the improvements one, okay? Improvements, and I if I got my phone out, I forget what the other one is. It's another I word, but they overlap. They're the same thing on the two pennies. And one of the things they put in the improvements last year, PD put two things in there because they needed to get them paid for.
Okay.
Well, okay, so we're already using some of those sales tax pennies to buy for fire and PD and those different things. So that one I'm not going to be really worry about anyway, because there's another one on the other penny that does the same thing. But if we're funding fire and PD with sales tax, they're not going to have to ask for it on the other penny.
Right.
Right? Okay. So that leaves economic development. Granted, we are funding economic development right now through that. But if you ask, the Magic Fund honestly hasn't been used in about 7 years from what I remember hearing. They haven't had a meeting in almost 2 years to even look at anything. Now, there's 3 programs that do continue to be used that aren't under the Magic Fund, right, or economic development. There's the facade program, because the money that's coming out has no place to go into those accounts, so they're using it for something else, right? Same thing with the Renaissance Zone. Again, in all the buckets, there's somewhere between $10 and $12 million over there. Let those programs continue to be used using that money, right?
Yeah.
But I don't believe there's a need for economic development the way that they have it set up. If we have the chamber working on it and we have Brian and the city staff working on it, what are we doing collecting tax dollars to do it as well? I mean, I know you want to approach it from 1,000 different ways, but again, if it's not being used, then what are we doing with it, right? Why are we taking it and setting it? You know what, 2 years ago, they took the money out and they're like, well, we can't put it in the accounts because the accounts are full. So, hey, let's buy a bunch of Wayfair finding signs for it. And you're like, people would have much rather had that $800,000 back in their pocket than a bunch of signs. No, granted, the signs look nice. Sure. If they haven't blown over, they're great. But
if you can ride under them, we still need to get out and test that.
I wouldn't test it. I mean, I'd be hitting my head. So, but I mean, so will they be underfunded? No. I think right now we're overfunding things, and we can take that money and use it for other things that are more important to the city's needs, because we don't have with this flood control and NAWS on the books. As long as they're going to be on the books, we have to find some creative ways, especially with now the state capping the 3%. We have to find creative ways to fund the budget that isn't property tax. And so what are we going to do? And I think ultimately, you know, when Pittner says, oh, well, let's do another 1/2 cent sales tax, the people in Minot are taxed out, guys. You've been doing this to us for the last 10, 20 years. We are taxed out. You know, when an elderly couple or an elderly individual who's on a fixed income has to make a decision to pay their property taxes late or buy their medicine, there's a problem there. And you know, I'm not saying that's all over the place, but it's happening out there. And so those are things we as a community and as a council have to address, right? There's ways to do it without raising taxes on everybody. That's that mindset, tax and spend. I think we've seen it in Washington, D.C. for a while, and everybody's tired of it. Yeah. So
for sure. So a feedback that we've heard throughout this campaign season is with 3 people running for mayor that are currently on city council. The question has been, well, you're on council, you can already accomplish these things. Yep. So why is the need to run for mayor? So I ask you that. Why do you feel like there's a need to run for mayor, and does running for mayor help you accomplish some of these goals that you've talked about so far?
I think so. So granted, as mayor, you don't have the ability to bring motions and a couple other things on the council, and I understand that. I don't bring a ton of motions as it is anyway. We work through them, or they're already on the agenda, but we do things. So sure, that may hurt a little bit, but I think other people on the board or on the council that think similarly to I may bring up a motion or do something. You know, I can't guarantee anything, but my bigger thought process on this is, besides being the face of Minot, what does the mayor do weekly? the mayor and the city manager sit down and say, this is the direction that the city is going. How do we want to get there? That's where I think, in my mind, we can have a better direct link to the city manager and the council, right? This is, Harold, hey, this is where the council wants to go. How do we get there? Rather than the city, and again, I'm not saying how any of the past mayors have done it, but it doesn't seem that there's a lot of direction from the council. Most of the direction comes from the city to the council,
Gotcha.
and then we move the way they want.
Right.
I think the citizens of Minot want something different. They want to see the city respond to what the community wants, not just what they think is best. And ultimately, that's who we're doing all this for, so we really should be listening to them.
Yeah.
So I think having the ability to sit down with the city manager on a weekly basis and say, hey, look, you know what? This is going weird. Let's start to fix some of these things. Or, hey, this is what the council is feeling and thinking. How do we get here? How do we move in that direction? Or how do we turn this ship that way?
Right. No, that makes sense. I think something that we've heard you mention before also is that need for leadership, which is basically a word to summarize kind of what you've talked about. How do you define effective leadership at the city level? How would you ensure transparency and accountability are forefront?
Well, again, what is leadership, right? Leadership is the ability for a person to bring groups that don't agree together to find a common goal and work towards it, right? I'm not quite sure, and again, not taking shots at anybody, but I'm not quite sure we've had solid leadership at the top of this Minot City Council for the last 10 years, and everybody can point out who the two mayors were, and again, not taking shots, but there's been some stuff there that you all kind of go, why did that happen? Or why are we doing this? Why are we allowing these things? What's going on? Rather than, in some of the processes and some of the things that have happened over the last 10, 15 years, there's been meetings behind closed doors. There's been discussions that have happened that haven't been in the public. How do we get to transparent and effective good leadership? We need to be open and honest with the public. If we make a mistake, we make a mistake and we call it out. If somebody does something inappropriate, we talk about it, right? I mean, the same thing you would do in your home or your business or any place else is how we need to run the city. And I don't believe that most of us in the community have felt that we've had that over the last 10 plus years.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Let's talk about the community. Okay. Obviously, that's one of your priorities as well, is community involvement. Something that the city has done this year is the neighborhood meetings, and it's been a neat thing to create opportunity for community engagement, though it still feels like the community does not always show up.
Right.
So are there, with this being a priority, are there any specific things that you have in mind that might help foster some engagement with the community?
That's tough, because part of it, I think, is the community being like, yeah, whatever, we've heard this before, right? Yeah. And part of it is, sometimes we don't always plan or do things at the best time for the community, right? Like, you talk about a city council meeting at 5:30 at night, supper time, people, during school, you got homework, practices. During the summer, you're doing everything else. The community meetings, I believe they've been at 4 to 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Again, a lot of people are working. I think if we're going to do some of these things, we have to have better planning. And I'm not saying we're not planning well, but just better planning and execution for the community, right?
Right.
If the community says, hey, 5 o'clock doesn't work for us, then why would we schedule a meeting at 5 o'clock?
Yeah.
And those are the things we need to ask. So, if the city goes and takes the approach that, hey, here's a Facebook poll, here's our next community neighborhood meeting, would you guys prefer it at 4:30, 5:30, or 6:30? Who will we get the most showing up from, right?
Right, yeah.
Let's ask the community, right? How do we change this? That is going to be the hardest thing. How do we bring back the citizenry in the community to know that we're going to listen, to trust that we're going to listen, and we're going to do the things that they're asking for? There's only one way to do it. You do it, and you keep pushing through it, no matter how hard and painful it is, right?
Right.
And that's what we have to do.
Yeah. No, that makes sense.
Other than that, if you got ideas, I'm listening. Tell me how we get everybody to re-engage.
Yeah. No kidding.
Each person has their own thing that will cause them, right? Last year, I was unengaged until I found out we were going to spend $1.4 million on something we weren't supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
I became engaged at that point, and I've been engaged ever since. And ultimately, every single person in Minot has to have that same realization. There's one thing that's going to spark them to get re-engaged.
Yeah.
And that's what we're looking for.
Well, it feels like a lot of the city engagement things is centered around city stuff.
Yeah.
One of them that's not is the Public Works Department.
Okay.
Where they open their house and they allow you to stop by and there's hot dogs and it's a fun thing.
Yeah.
But it feels like there's not a lot of those things. So are there things like that can happen that are not necessarily centered around, hey, this is what the garbage dump does, but more around just creating conversation wherever that might come from?
Community events sponsored by the city?
Exactly.
That would be fantastic, right? And I know there's some, right? But what I'd like to ultimately see, gosh, what if we every year had a community picnic sponsored and put on by the city, right? I mean, we did it. It starts at noon on a Friday or a Thursday or whatever it is. I think those are the types of things that you see start to grow, right? Like, hey, we went to that last year, and that was actually a lot of fun. You know, we got to interact with staff. Most of the citizens in Minot, and I was one of them too, you don't know the people that work for the city of Minot. So getting to know the people that work for the city, that are taking care of everything, that are helping all the things, those are important steps too, because when you get to know the people that are running the city you live in, you ultimately feel more engaged, right? And you feel more comfortable reaching out and saying, hey, there's an issue here, or I saw this, or why are we doing this? They have to be able, the community has to be able to feel that they know the people in the city, whether that be the council or the city employees, and they have to feel that they can trust us because we're going to do all the right things. And I'm not saying we've broken trust. I don't mean that as a city, but as a council, I think there's been some questions over the years.
Well, I'll say this, though. You say not breaking trust, but at the latest city council meeting, you had a resident of Minot stand up there and say the city told them that maybe that they would be able to sue the city if things didn't happen a certain way. And for me, as a person in the city, like that doesn't make me comfortable at all from a taxpayer or as a citizen, that if I go to the city, that's the response I'm going to get.
This is the second or third instance in the last year that I've been on council that I've heard that a city employee said, well, maybe you should just sue us, or it doesn't matter, or what, something that is not an appropriate response to a community member. And granted, we all have bad days. We don't know what's going on in anybody's life. But the last thing you want to hear somebody from our city say to somebody else is, well, you could sue us if you really want. That's how does a community member feel that their city says, yeah, we don't care. Right. Sue us if you want to. That's the things we have to get away from. Those are the instances and the occurrences that happen that I think a lot of people in Minot go, well, so-and-so said this was sold to them. I mean, what do you think? You're going to tell 1,000 people. And they're going to tell 5,000 people. And I mean, that's where just kind of similar to, hey, Minot is not open to do business, right? Or Minot's tough to do business with. Whether it's real or perceived, once the perception is out there, it's real.
It's done.
It's real. So
absolutely. We're going to continue to move on through some of the priorities that you have, but one thing that I want to cut to is you've had the opportunity to endure some press during this campaign. It started out with something that we've already talked about, and that was property taxes. And now the name of the game has changed over the last week. Been a couple articles released concerning some legal stuff out in Colorado. And so I just wanted to ask you about that, give you an opportunity to kind of respond to some of those things.
So I'm not going to talk about the incident because, quite honestly, everybody that's writing and talking about it, they weren't there. They weren't there at court when the judge dismissed all the charges. So I was arrested. It happened. Bad day in my life, obviously, right? Got arrested. All charges were dismissed. So for people, and this is one of the things that's really bothered me, and it's been unexpected as a guy who was born and raised in Minot that wants to just run for mayor and help Minot get back on a better path in my mind. The attacks have been just unbelievable, right? Like, for somebody to say, and they printed on their article, Rob Fuller has a long criminal history.
Right.
Rob Fuller has a history of domestic violence. Let's vote for one that doesn't have a criminal record. First of all, I have no criminal record. In order to have a criminal record, you have to be convicted of a crime. So now there's 3 instances out there where they're spreading direct lies. Doesn't matter what I was arrested for. It doesn't matter. I'm going to say this. They put a domestic violence charge or kicker on there because we were living together. That is the only reason why. The judge doesn't throw out domestic violence cases if there's actually domestic violence. So for everybody to say that is absolute nonsense. But hey, when you don't have a record of your own to stand on, when you don't have anything that you've done to say, hey, look at what we've done in the city, what are you going to do? You're going to take and you're going to attack the guy that wants to make the changes, that has some ideas or whatever. One of the things that's been surprising to me, though, is, and I don't do much on Facebook anymore. I've had to just back off it because, but people that have never spoken to me, people that know nothing about me, people that have never, ever even been in the same room with me, have such a derogatory and negative opinion. And all I've done on that council for the last year is say, hey, we need to lower property tax, we need to get the community re-involved, and we need to take care of our local businesses. Like, you don't know me. And I understand you may not like that I'm a white conservative or whatever it is, but have a conversation with the person before you judge the person, right? That to me has always been the surprising thing in politics. Does it bother me? No, it doesn't, honestly, because I got great advice a long time ago from somebody, and it was one of the things that stuck with me my whole life. Don't worry about the opinion of somebody you wouldn't ask advice from.
Yeah.
It makes common sense, right?
Right.
Again,
Yeah.
Why do I care what you say? You don't know me. You don't know anything about me, But I mean, they've written stories about whether I should be running for mayor because of my son's health. They've pulled out, the property tax thing, which again isn't illegal. Building sells, all the property taxes get paid with interest, and the county's all happy. So I don't know what everybody's issue there is, but the lies that have been spread that I have a criminal record, that I have a criminal history, or that I'm a criminal. That to me is a different level. I mean, this is Minot, North Dakota, right? We're supposed to take care of our neighbors. We help each other. That's how we were raised, right? Like everybody always says, what's the best thing about Minot? And the most common answer all the time, it's the people, it's the people. Well, if it's the people, why are they acting like this? Right? What is so scary about Rob Fuller being mayor? And I understand that people on the left or Democrats don't like me because, again, I'm a white conservative male. But when you see them teaming up with the establishment and attacking me together, that makes you question why. Like, really?
Yeah.
Why are they going there? And that's kind of odd, So, again, they can attack me all they want. All I want to do is bring Minot into a new direction that will be open, transparent. We have good leadership. We have had substandard leadership over the last 10 years, at least in my mind.
Yeah.
So I want to fix those things. I want the community to be involved. As I said before, it's our city.
Right.
What happens here should matter to all of us, to every single person. And I don't care if you like me or don't like me. I'm up there working for everybody.
Right.
I'm not doing what's best for me. I'm not doing what's best for this group. I'm not doing what's best for that person. I'm doing what's best for the community. Those are the decisions we make. Driving down taxes, making sure our local businesses survive and have the opportunity to do things, and getting the community involved. What easier things could you pick than those 3 things?
Right.
So
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's a nonpartisan position.
Yeah.
And it feels like perhaps some are trying to push that to a different way of thinking there, but
they want to paint your narrative, right?
Yeah.
They want to say, and that's easy to do, because one of the things I've said I'm not going to do is I'm not going to fight back like they do. I'm not going to be dirty. Do I like what they're saying and doing? No, absolutely not. I think it's disgusting. My wife keeps using that word. It's disgusting. And I said, yeah. I said, but we can't worry about it. We have a bigger objective here, and it's to help fix Minot and get us back on the right track and the right direction for our kids, for our grandkids, and for everybody that wants to live in this town in the future.
Absolutely. So another priority that you have is investing in the community, whether that's through giving local contractors, local businesses, the ability to match these bids. I have a few questions in this area,
Okay.
but at the beginning, I just want you to kind of just map that out a little bit, how you feel that we can do a better job of investing back into the community.
Well, when you have businesses that are spending thousands of dollars in property tax, or hundreds of thousands of dollars in some cases in property tax, their employees live and work here in Minot, right? They pay tax. And then we take and send those tax dollars to Minnesota or South Dakota or wherever we're hiring a contractor from. And we don't even give them an opportunity to get in the conversation.
Yeah.
That to me says we don't care about our local businesses. We'll just keep making and doing what we're doing because we can do it. To me, every time you let a local business get some of their tax dollars back through doing work for you, it grows their business, which does what? They hire more employees, which brings more people to Minot, which, homes are being built if employees have money. I mean, there's so many things that happen by reinvesting in your local businesses. One of the things we hear all the time is, oh, we don't have enough of this, or we don't have that, or why don't we have those things? Because we don't take care of our local businesses. And I'm just going to say this, last year, we went and bought vehicles from a place that wasn't a local business, and it was $12,000. We lost out on $12,000. Now, do you think if we'd had a local contractor preference in place, they wouldn't have said, yeah, we'll match that price and we'll take it? So then, even if they're not making as much profit as they wanted to or whatever, or they thought they should have, they're getting an opportunity to do the work for the city that they pay the taxes to.
Right.
And to me, that is a no-brainer, right? Like, all we have to do with this is say, hey, look, these jobs, street maintenance, right? Paving, water main maintenance, those types of things. Again, it's going to affect maybe 10 jobs a year.
Okay.
10 jobs a year in between $500,000 and $3 million, right? We're not doing flood control because there's federal dollars tied to it. There will be other local jobs that have federal dollars to it. So it isn't that. But again, and as Mike Blessum said the other night, we hired a Canadian company to do the calabarium out at the cemetery when we have a local company that's been here for 100 years. 100 years they've been in Minot. They bid. They were within a certain percentage. They could have taken that work and said, you know what? We can do it for that. We'd gladly do that.
Yeah.
How does that hurt anybody? It makes sure we get the best price,
Right.
but then it also makes sure that the local guys have a chance to maybe capture some of that work. Not all of it. And I mean, again, when I say it's going to happen, it might affect 10 jobs. If it affects 10 jobs, it actually might be 3 or 1 that actually take that preference and use it.
Yeah.
So I don't understand why everybody's so scared of this. The pushback from Alderwoman Olson and the pushback from Pittner, they make zero sense. Pittner's like, well, I feel like we're going to be losing out on quality. Really? You think our local contractors don't do as well a job as the big contractors? And and those things, to me, that argument doesn't hold any water at all. Like, our local people, and he's a local contractor, right? Like, our local contractors have built this community for the last 100 years. We talk about that there's nobody to build homes out there anymore. Why not? Because the ones that are retiring are like, I've had enough of this. And the ones that are coming up are like, yeah, I don't want anything to do with you guys. I'm going to build homes over here or over here. Those are the things that we have to fix and change. And by making sure our local contractors get a shot at it, that's all we're asking for.
Yeah, that makes sense, especially with a Canadian contractor. I mean, you're just talking about two different ways of viewing money right there.
They hate us.
Yeah,
Canada's mad at the United States.
Right, but not only that, with the exchange rate and everything, they can come in lower and they can make more money.
Yeah.
So that's a difficult one to take there, I'm sure, for a local contractor. When you talk about investing in the community, I think a topic that would come up is economic development.
Yep.
Two things that automatically get associated with economic development are things we've talked about often. That would be tax increment financing, or TIFs.
Yep.
Be the Renaissance, those types of things. But ultimately, those are in place so we can attract, in theory, so we can.
How's that working for us?
Right. So basically, I wanted to get to the point of my question, which is, how do we go about attracting new businesses and industries into Minot?
we got to cut regulations. We have to cut regulations and red tape. We haven't talked about it, but Simplot was looking at coming to Minot. It wasn't just the city of Minot's fault, so I'm not saying that, but we drug it out. And the guy that was working for them was inexperienced. And we helped him along, but maybe not enough as we should have. But ultimately what happened was they decided not to do things here because it took so long because their employees quit. So the two people they were going to have run things here got hired by another company locally, and they said, hey, at this point, we're not coming here. Part of the problem was how long it took.
Gotcha.
How do we fix that? We got to cut the red tape. Instead of putting up red tape, let's put out the red carpet and say, how can we get this done? What do you guys need from us? We can't do this, but we can do this. Those types of things. TIFs. In my world, TIFs will be used very sparingly. They do have a role.
Right.
But there's other things that you can do besides give TIFs. Again, I think when you're looking at projects and different things, and I know it's easy to throw out, hey, you won't have to pay tax in the future, but that just hurts everybody else in town, right? By every time we give away a TIF or we do something where that person, Renaissance Zone facade program, where they don't have to pay taxes for a certain number of years, that is on the rest of us because those services are still going to be required in those areas, so we're paying for them one way or another. It just gets distributed amongst the rest of us. We can do better than that, right? Yeah. TIFs, there's other types of, not financing, but there's other types of incentives that cities can put out there, and I don't mean special assessments. Special assessments are just another tax. Okay. So, and that just lands on the end user instead of the middle guy. So there's other things we can do that we don't have to use TIFs and those types of things where we're giving up property tax to come to Minot. We can incentivize them in other ways. We can incentivize them by cutting fees on permits and different things like that. Let's use a Sam's Club, right? We know Costco isn't going to come here because we'll all drive to Bismarck for Costco. Costco told us that. So let's focus on Sam's. What can we do to attract a Sam's Club to Minot? There's a handful of different things if they wanted to come to Minot that we could use as incentives to help them jump into the market. We got to have those conversations. We got to get in front of them, and we got to be able to show them that we're not going to make this a long, drawn-out process, that we can expedite it a little bit, and we will help them however we feel is the right way for the community.
Right, and it seems like the City of Minot invests a lot of money into this area. We have somebody on city staff that helps with this. We have Visit Minot that helps not directly with getting businesses, but getting events here. And then we have the chamber that also receives money from the city in order to get this done. Feels like we spend a lot of money in this area already. So is the current process the best way, or is there...
Well, and that's just it. If we have somebody in the city doing it and we have the chamber helping us do it on a high level, is it working for us? I don't feel like it's worked greatly for us now. I'm not picking on the chamber or I'm not picking on the city employee in any way. I'm just saying, I'm just saying the ideas and the things that we've done, we keep trying the same thing over and over, just a reiteration and a rehash of the same thing. So let's try some different things, right? Let's try some different things, okay? Facade Renaissance, we're great, but they're only open to certain sections of this city, and that isn't fair. Yeah. We have a bunch of money sitting in economic development buckets, right? The Magic Fund and the other buckets that are sitting there. We have a bunch of money sitting there that we haven't used. So in my opinion, what we've been doing hasn't been working as far as like bringing that sales tax dollars over there and doing that. We haven't been acquiring that. What needs to change first is people need to understand and see that, hey, Minot's willing to do some things that they normally haven't done to make it easier to come build our business in Minot or start developing here in Minot or do those things. Right.
And so then you talk about cutting regulation, which is the incentive there. And are there any specific things that you can kind of point to that whether it's just the process of how we have individuals work with them, or if there's specific red tape that you would just go ahead and have removed? What do you see there?
Well, there's a lot of things that smarter people than me have said, hey, this is an issue, this is an issue. I think what we need to do is, as a community, we need to get the regulation, policy, and ordinance people in a room. We need to get the builders and developers in a room, and we need to get business people in a room and say, okay, this is what we got. Start redlining out the stuff that makes it tough for you guys to do business or want to do more business.
Yeah.
Again, it isn't our decision. It's the community decision. Some of it we will be able to do. Some of it we may not be able to do for safety reasons. But it's got to be a community conversation, because what we've been doing as a council and as a city for the last few years isn't working. We're not getting new development in Minot. I mean, we had to fight to get Circle K so they could build a gas station out there right off of the highway. You know, that to me should have been a lot easier. We should have been like, hey, yeah, come on, what can we do? You know, Simplot. Hey, what can we do to help? You know, and I know our people in the city did help. The gentleman from that was leading their charge was maybe a little bit inexperienced or first time dealing with development or anything like that. But again, that's where we as a city can maybe step up and say, you know what? They seem to be struggling. Let's go out a little, do a little bit extra, do a little bit more, and get them through this process so we can get this done, right? Not red tape, red carpet.
Yeah.
So.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. Let's see. Let's go to public safety services, all that. That's something that's received a lot of attention over the last little bit.
Yeah.
Obviously, Minot now has a new police chief.
Yeah.
How do you view the police department? That's the one that's probably received the most focus. How do you view that kind of progressing over the next 1 to 5 years?
Well, I think since we've been able to kind of change some things down there because there was some issues, I think the people that we have in place as leadership now, the new chief, I think they have some good ideas and the direction they're taking things. You know, you hear about a morale and a culture difference down there, so those are good things to hear. I love the people that are down there. I love the police department. I love the people that stand up on the front lines and say, not in our city, not on this time. You know, those are the people that we have to make sure as a council, the fire and PD, I mean, all of our city employees, but the services that those guys provide for our community are protection services, right? And there's some others that do that too, but I mean, those are protection services. So we have to give them 100% support. They have to know we support them. We may not always agree with what they want or think what they're doing is the correct thing, but we have to give our support. And then if there's things that need to change, I think the direction that both PD is headed right now and the direction that Chief Kelly has taken the fire department are spot on. I think they're both looking very good.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. Something that Minot has struggled with is a perception problem. It's something that we reported, or not reported on, but there was a column that was put out at the Dakotan.
Yeah.
And a lot of that comes from whether it was the PD, whether it was our city hall, whether it's just, I don't know, Minot in general. I don't think it's Minot in general as much. There's been some specific things, but I think also the flood has also played in, where a lot of times we're just going to the state asking for money. Yeah. That's how we are famous at the state level, and then we get coverage when bad things happen. How do we change that? How do we become even a leader? I understand that when you go leader and you talk about that, maybe you think of Fargo or maybe you think of Bismarck, but I think it's possible for a small town to be a leader in areas in the state. How do we get back to something like that?
Well, you do stuff like local contractor preferences, which, as they said, nobody else in the state does. You look at ways of driving down property tax and not doing special assessments like the other cities. I mean, those are the type of leadership things I think that the citizens want to see out of us, right? Mm-hmm. Making their lives great and getting them everything service-wise they need in the city, but at the best possible price, right? Yeah. I mean, those are the things that make you a leader. Rather than saying, hey, you know what? Bismarck special assesses everybody, let's do that. Rather than saying, hey, you know what? Fargo put a 0.5-cent sales tax out there for first responders. Let's do that. No, let's do it a different way. Let's do it what's right for Minot. I am so sick and tired of hearing people say, well, Fargo did it or Bismarck did it. We are not Fargo. We are not Bismarck. We do not have the tax base or the population to do things the same way that they are doing them. It's not even feasible. Yeah. But ultimately, that's where everybody always goes. Well, so-and-so's doing it. You be a leader by doing things differently, by doing things, changing the curriculum, changing the mindset, changing how people view things. That's how you be a leader. And you know what? I guarantee you, after we get a local contractor preference put in place, other cities in North Dakota will follow us. Yeah. 100%. I promise you.
Right. Yeah. they'll probably have to.
Yeah. Well, gosh, look at what Minot's doing. Hey, did somebody just say Minot's leading the league? You
Right?
know?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. That'd be crazy. Yeah. No, I think that'd be really good for the city. We need something like that where we can get behind.
Well, we
kind of like
do.
our high school football team and our basketball, right? That was
Gosh,
pretty.
you know what? I would love it if city council meetings got so popular on Monday night that it was like a Friday night football game at Minot High or something like that. That would be awesome. Like
Yeah.
packed full, standing room only. You're like, wow, what did we just
Let's go.
do here?
Yeah.
You know, like.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
But
get that engagement back.
that's what we want. We want the community to engage, and we want them to feel proud and support the council and the city, which, you know, when you're not doing the things that the public and the community feel are the right things,
Right.
that's where that falls by the wayside. And I think, I'm not saying everybody, but I think a majority of people in Minot would tell you, if you went and asked them that specific question, yeah, you know, they don't listen to us anyway, so what do we got to support?
Right. Yeah.
You know?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, we're coming to the end. This is a question we've asked you before, but I think it's a good question nonetheless because it stays fresh on viewers' minds. August 5th is the big day.
Yeah.
That's when people get to cast a vote. Of course, you can go and vote right now.
Yes, I just
ahead.
want to say this. So anybody that's concerned that there's no early voting, you can actually go down to the Ward County Admin Building. You can get your absentee ballot, which is normally a mail-in ballot, but you can fill it out right there, hand it right back to them, and they'll turn it in. So there is a form of early voting. You just have to do a little bit more work this time.
Yeah, which is great that there's still an option out there. So if you aren't going to be able to be in town August 5th, make sure you do that. But for people, as they begin to make that decision of who they're going to vote for,
Yeah.
why Rob Fuller?
Well, I think I bring a fresh approach, honestly. You know, I mean, that's my campaign slogan, right?
Yeah.
A fresh start, a stronger Minot. I think I bring a fresh approach because I will go sit down and have the conversations and have the discussions that nobody else seems to want to have. Why is this not working? Let's talk about it. Why are we doing this? Let's talk about it. Everybody is busy, and I understand that, and I get that. I'm not casting shade at anybody, but in order to do the job, you have to put the work in.
Yeah.
And that isn't always happening, and it hasn't always happened. So if you elect me, I will put the work in. There's no doubt in my mind. That's what I want to do. Every single time I say this is important to me, we start working on it. You know, or if somebody says, hey, why are we doing this? We start working on it. You know, if you want change and you want to see some different leadership, you want to see some integrity, honesty, truthfulness, not that we haven't had that, but not always there, I'm the guy to elect, Rob Fuller.
Very good. Well, I appreciate you coming on today.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you for watching this episode here at the Dakota. This episode of Minot Matters. Be sure to like and subscribe. Also want to remind that this was a paid episode, something that we have given every candidate the opportunity to do. Thanks for watching and have a great rest of your day.